Yay! That's good. Hello.
Cool. So, how are you guys? Hi, Carlos.
We're super well and super excited to start this.
Yeah, we are waiting for the people to join. We're 2 minutes before scheduled start. So, yeah. Hi, Vitaly.
Vitaly's here. Vitaly, hi. By the way, can you see my slides?
Yeah, I can see it. Let's ask the participants if they see it. Guys, can you see the slides?
Let's see if they're here, participants.
No, it should be in chat.
Daniel says that he sees. Great.
Nice. Daniel Mata.
Yes.
Perfect. Oh, good. So how are you doing, Bartosz? How are you doing today?
It's very hot here in Wrocław, and I'm like using my air conditioning to the full power to chill actually a little bit inside my apartment.
Really?
So, regards from Argentina. Hi, Andres.
Andres Villanueva. Good to see you here, man.
Yeah, isn't it amazing that you are able to actually communicate with the guys from all around the world?
It is amazing. It is, isn't it? All right, let's get this thing over here.
Andreas, Ville, Nisha. Guys, let's, whoa. Hello all from India.
Oh, hello. Well, there's a lot of people from different places.
Yeah.
Very diverse, geographic distribution.
Yes, we're diverse.
And I'm not sure if I was able to pronounce that. It's like a tongue twister.
Yeah. You put here.
Guys, people are joining, so I suggest to have like maybe 2 more minutes.
Perfect, no problem.
Yep,
we're fine.
Just everybody's seeing the slides, so good.
Do you know? I don't. No, never mind. Yo de la introducción, si estas vainas después de esto es un problema, pero termina con los viajes en eso. Listo. Reglamento para la cucharada, porque. So,
by the way, what time is in India right now?
In India, I don't know.
In India?
At least in Colombia, it's 1 p.m.
Yeah, but in Poland, 11:30 p.m. Pretty late.
Really late.
Yeah, I mean, and still you're joining. That's awesome.
Late night, 11:30. What? That's very late.
Yeah, very late.
It's like 2 minutes, sure.
Yeah.
Can you control from this? Yeah, no, it's just to see.
I could do it. But yeah, mainly to see advance.
Okay.
Mosh has joined. Hi, Mosh.
Josh.
I heard Mosh.
Yeah. Nice, esta soy yo. Esta la llamamos.
Hicieron dos
Son,
las dos días, buenos y malos.
sí. Y esto. Listo. No, perfecto. Míralas tú.
Juan,
Yes.
Jeff Delaney from AngularFirebase.com is here.
Oh, Jeff, how you doing, my friend?
Hey there.
Good to see you.
I love his videos. They are amazing.
You're the best. And every time I have a problem with Firebase or Angular Fire, that's the way to go with Jeff.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
sure.
And the quality of the videos is really awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is. And the website has a very pretty design. So yeah, love it.
So Juan, Carlos, let's get started, I guess. People are still joining, but we can have like a small talk. Like, I mean, it would be nice for you guys to say a couple of words about yourself, what you do, and probably a couple of words of amazing NG Colombia, which I'm super excited about.
Sure. All right. So I'll just get started. I have a presentation of ourselves super quick, so I might be able to show you who we actually are. But anyway, hi to everybody. Thanks for coming here. You're super welcome. We're super excited to share some of the things we have learned in the past. And yeah, and Bartosz, thank you for making all of this happen with the show and what's upcoming next. So good. So my name is Juan. I am from Colombia. And I publish a lot of stuff on Twitter about Angular. So if you want to follow me at JD Juan, that's the way to go. I develop software at Scalable. That's pretty much what I do. And here it is.
I'm Carlos Lopez, aka Lochillo17. I'm also a developer in Juxi, and I focus mostly in the Angular community here in Colombia. Though I tried to get into the NG Colombia speakers, but since I had a very bad call for papers.
Yes.
At least
Anyway, by the way, for everyone in the audience, and we're going to speak about a little bit more, but Bartosz is coming to Colombia in a few months. So I just let you know in a second. So nice. Also, I'm a Google developer expert. I just put the pointer so you can just spot me right. And yeah, just a Google developer expert in Angular. Anything I can help you out with, just let me know. I'm super happy to share my knowledge. And I also organize Angular Medellin, which is a community here in Medellin, where we have a lot of meetups, workshops, code labs, and everything related. But finally, and most important, I am also the organizer of NG Colombia, the first Angular conference in Latin America. This is how the speaker lineup looked like last year. And you can go to ngcolombia.com and find it, but you should know that Bartosz is one of the main speakers that is going to join us from Poland. So Bartosz, congratulations for passing to the call for papers. We're super excited to have you here now in 4 months. Yep. So this is it. That's all we have for introduction. Here's the slides. If you want to follow, you're going to be able to find all the information right there. But Bartosz, anytime if you want to start right now, just let me know.
Yeah, just maybe actually I will just say also something about myself before we start. My name is Bartosz. I ran Angular Academy trainings, and at the same time, I started this initiative, Angular Academy show, that brings together amazing people from the community, as you see now, Juan and Carlos, the people who are tremendously active in the community and does a lot of cool stuff, speaks at the conferences, organize meetups. And together right now we are going to discuss an interesting topic, which actually for me is very important, how to design scalable Angular architectures. And let's get started, right?
All right, so let's start. By the way, if anyone of the audience have any question at any time, you can just post it in the chat, and Bartosz will be able to manage it and then make the question when the time is right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's also the Q&A section that is specifically so that the question is directed to us. If you post it in the chat, other people can make the answer, but if you want a direct answer from us, the Q&A section is the right place.
All right. So let's get started. Warning, this is very important for all of you. You might not need anything of what we are going to talk about, and you might as well define your own very standards. So the truth is that at the end of the day, many of you implement your own way of making your architectures scalable, and that's completely fine. What we're going to share here is stuff that has worked for us, that we have followed over maybe 2 years working with Angular, and it works pretty well. But you might as well have your own version. So feel free to share it. It's completely fine. You don't have to follow this specific advice we're going to give today, okay?
Yeah, there is no right answer when it comes to software. It's just that there is better and worse ways, and ours might be one of the ways that works, but you can have your own way.
Yep. So what's the problem we're trying to solve? Let's start with the basics, right? So it goes like this. You have a project in which you have much more complexity, in which new features or requirements are added, and then automatically the size increases. Size of your team, size of your code base, size of your repositories, and anything else. This is the problem we're trying to solve, how to manage all this complexity represented in requirements that increase the size of our project. And in order to understand this, I think it's important that we define what those requirements might be about. So when you're doing a project, you have 2 types of requirements according to some professionals. So you have functional requirements that are requirements such as features, like a button here, a form there, a sidebar. But you might also have non-functional requirements. Those are known as quality attributes, such as scalability, reusability, interoperability, and so on and so forth. The architecture, or the proposal we're going to give you today, is going to try to focus on such requirements so you can just make your project in a more scalable way. So yeah, anything else I'm missing?
I don't think so. It's just we are going to deal with them and try to make it the easier to understand as possible.
Yep, totally. Okay, so let's get started. So the format we're going to use to explain how to make scalable Angular architectures is an interview. So Carlos and I are going to interview ourselves as if it were a real interview, like if you were going to get a job, and then the interviewer is going to ask you questions like, so what's the difference between let and const in JavaScript, and that kind of stuff. So we're going to interview each other, and then you're going to find the answer right below.
Yeah, take it like if we are going to interview a software architecture candidate,
yes,
and see how it answers to these questions related to architecture scalability.
Yep. Okay, so if you're ready, we'll get started. It's exciting?
Yeah, let's guys, what do you think about this format, right? Write in the chat.
Yeah, it's a new format. Okay,
yeah.
So first question, Carlos is gonna make it, okay? So.
Okay, hey, how are you, Juan? Good to meet you. For this interview, I'm going to ask you a few questions, right?
Yes.
So I want to ask you about architecture, since it's the main focus of this interview. And the first question will be, how do you make an architecture that is scalable?
Okay, so Carlos, first you need to stop a little bit right there, because actually scalability in terms of architecture has many dimensions. That's a very, very big question. So we might need to actually separate it into specific topics, whether it's folder structure, modularization, code patterns, or state management. There are many ways to talk about this problem. So when do we move forward with folder structure? So Carlos, let me ask you something. How do we keep a folder structure scalable so that when I add new files, it doesn't become that complicated to find them and to be able to work through them?
Okay, this is a very important question in terms of an application, right? There's many things that you can do to make the folder structure easier to navigate and to understand, right? So first, we should talk about how the folder is distributed,
yep.
right? some of the things you have to take in account is, for example, the way you nest the components and the structures and the modules, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we should start with is the nesting of the components when regarding its parent. For example, the parent of a component is the component that uses that child, right?
So you're talking about this primarily, isn't it?
Yep. So when you create a component that is used by another component, the folder structure should reflect that relation, where you put the component inside the folder of the parent, so that you know where to look at when you are working in that
Specific
component.
So, but I have one question. How do I manage to keep a folder with so many components at the same time? It's gonna have probably 20, 40, or 100 files at the same time. How do I manage that?
Yeah, there is one specific recommendation that the Angular team does, which is keeping the folders up to maximum of 7 files.
Really? Why?
Because there's a psychological reason, and that is normal people or almost any people have a limit on how many objects or things can keep track at the same time.
Okay.
And most people manage between 7 and 9. There is, of course, there is people that can manage more, but that's like the recommended size for anything that you can track at the same time, like keep in your mind.
Okay.
So the Angular team keeps this in mind and recommends keeping it up to 7 files.
Okay. Okay. But
what?
I believe this is a good recommendation. But isn't there a way to remind me of this more easily, like some kind of acronym or something I could use to remind this?
Okay, so there's an acronym made by the Angular team, which is, I'm not sure it's the Angular team, but it's called LIFT, right?
It's this one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So LIFT stands for locate, identify, flat, and dry.
Okay.
So the base of LIFT is that you should be able to, you need to have a folder structure so that you are able to locate very easily what you are searching for.
Okay.
Right? You are able to identify what it is in the folder or the file based on the name.
On the name.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's why Angular has their files named as .component, .model, .module, .service.
Yeah.
That's the reason, right? Okay.
That naming convention make it easier for you to know. Okay, this is a component. Okay, this is a pipe.
Okay.
This is a directive, and so on and so on.
Okay, that's locate, but then what is it? How identify?
Okay, that's part of the naming is only part of the locate. The identify part is when you make it in the name explicit what it is, if it's a component or if it's a module. The locate part is how do you navigate the folder structure to find that component. For example, if you know you are searching for the user component, usually it's inside a module named user or something for in that.
So that it is coherent when you're reading your code. Like if you go to the user folder, you should find the user component, the user pipe, the user module, and everything related. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but then I understand what locate is. It's about having files that have a proper name that I can find easily and that are distributed by domain. And then I understand that identifies is being able to open a file and read it, understand what it is right away without having mixing several things at the same time. But then what is it? What does flat means?
Okay, flat. You got me there for a second.
This is a real interview.
Okay. Flat is also about the folder structure and the way you organize the files. What we were talking about a few minutes ago about keeping 5 or 7 files by folder, and when you use more than 5 or 7, it's harder to keep track. So the recommendation is to use subfolders when you cannot keep track anymore.
So I'd like to add something here. And there is an important question when you're writing code, when you're working on a project, and that is, how many folders do I have to open to find a component?
Yeah.
So the answer is it can be like 10 folders or maybe 2 folders, but that often depends. So when you're creating your project, you can create a folder called components and then put all your components there. And then what you will do is that you're categorizing every artifact in your project by its type. So you have your modules in a folder called modules, all your services, all your components together, all your pipes together. That's a good way to go. And some projects use this format, this approach. That's completely fine. But when you're having a very large project, you actually might find it easier to find a component when it is divided by the domain. When you instead have a folder called user, administrator, registries, etc., etc., and then you find the respective component in every folder that you're mentioning. So that's maybe what flat is about. So how about try dry? What's dry means?
Okay, dry stands for don't repeat yourself, which means you should not reinvent the wheel, and you should reuse what other people have already fixed or deal with. So the basis of this is using the libraries that are available to that specific purpose. For example, the database one, Firebase, for example, is a good example. You should not have to re-implement all about the database if you have these libraries that make it easier for you. And that also extracts the complexity because you let other proven solutions deal with the problem. Okay,
maybe another example that came to my mind is, how about if you have this file you might know about, which is called app.component.html. That's like the root component that has your first view of your application. If you name this file app-view-component.html, it might be redundant because at some point you have the HTML and then you also have the view, which is pretty much the same thing. So you also, when you're trying to be dry, try to use a correct naming for your files. So yes, I guess this covers how to actually keep my folder structures scalable. That's pretty good.
Yep.
Does anyone from the audience have any quick question? Maybe Bartosz, do you want to add something?
Actually, I just saw that Vitaly asked a question. What about keeping more shared stuff as libraries instead of shared modules, so that we actually have imported it as external dependency? What do you think about it?
Sorry.
Can you
repeat that?
So the question was, if I understood correctly, is if I should keep my files in a share folder, in a share module, or if I should put it in a library outside the project. Was that the question?
That was the question, I believe. Right, Vitaly? Are you with us? Maybe there is a delay.
Yeah,
very likely.
Okay, we actually, Vitaly, and for the rest of the people out there, we're gonna jump over that topic in a second. So I'm gonna answer the question in a moment, okay?
Cool.
So let's go for the next section, right?
Yeah, next section.
So what's the question?
Okay, so after we deal with the folder structure, how do we keep up with the team size when it grows? Because as the project keeps going and gets more successful, the team behind it to support the project and everything is bound to grow, right?
Okay, that's another question. So I think most important thing here is to actually start with the base of Angular, which is the components. So the components are the base structure, like the Lego, right? And one of the main important things you have to remember, and this I took from Bartosz's presentation on scalability, is that you have to be able to identify which components are smart and which components are dummy, or dull, or stupid. So another way to refer to these components are stateless and stateful, where stateless components do not have a state specifically, do not have the specific facade service at all. They just receive the information, display it, and then emit events. And in the other hand, we have the smart components, those that actually have access to the source of information and are in charge of passing the information to the dummy components, therefore making the dummy components more reusable throughout your application. So it's very important that whenever you're trying to expand your team to add more engineers working in your project, that you make very reusable components separated in their concerns, so a given team or a given member can work in a given component instead of having everything cluttered in just one component.
Yeah, this goes to the point where if you don't separate these kind of responsibilities,
yeah,
the components get so tightly coupled,
yeah,
that any change that one people make breaks something for someone else in a different component. So that's the reason to keep this separation.
Totally. Now, another important thing here is actually that not only we have components to somehow abstract some kind of related logic, but we also have modules that are group of related artifacts. I usually use the word artifacts to refer to services, directives, components, pipes, etc., like a general word. So Angular modules allows me to actually group related artifacts. And in such sense, I would like to use this screenshot from Jury Streamflower presentation. Jury is also a GDE, and he's a super cool guy. And he shows something we known as feature, core, and share modules. So that's like the main distribution of the type of modules we have in Angular. So let's start with the first one, feature modules. So feature modules are just modules that group related artifacts that represent a functionality in your application. So it's very simple. If you have a set of user functions, say read user, delete user, update user, whatever, then you can just put all of those components, pipes, and services inside the user module. That's like the main grouper. And you will create another feature module for the admin, for the student, for any role you want. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it's called the share module. Share module is a module that holds artifacts that are shared across your entire project that might be used by other modules. So say, for example, a component like a spinner, which is, a spinner might work. Another one, maybe a button, maybe a sidebar. No, maybe a sidebar. I don't really know a good example. A spinner is a good example, I believe. So,
Juan, maybe the model pop-up.
A model is a dialogue. Dialogue is a very good example.
That's a good one.
Other examples are services. Services are a very good example of this. You need that logic in many parts of the application, so you put it in the share module so that any component can access that kind of functionality.
And that brings me to the third type of module, because in services you can have two types of them. You can have singletons or regular services. So singletons are services that remain as one instance throughout the application. A singleton service, it's a service that it's only represented by one instance, and it's only created once throughout your application life cycle.
Yeah, it's basically a shared instance of the service.
Exactly. And such instances, you want to put them inside the core module. The core module is mainly used to hold singleton services. And the core module, and most importantly, it's only imported once in the app module. So that's the most important to remember. If you ever want to create a singleton service, you have to put it in the core module and then import it once in the root module. That's the difference.
Okay, can you explain what's the difference in singleton versus the normal service that is imported in everywhere? Like the
What do you mean?
Singleton is just one instance, right?
Yes.
So the non-singleton ones should be multiple instances, right?
Yes, multiple.
How does it affect if you use a singleton version?
That's a good question. So it's very simple. Say, for example, you have an instance of a service that is related to the authentication of the user in the application. So if you create a service and you hold all the information there, be it the user login, the email, the token, and many other things, if you use a non-singleton service, if you create a new instance every time, you're going to lose the information right after you navigate to another route or you go to another component. But if instead you use a singleton service, you're always going to keep your information in that service, and it's going to be accessible to other components or other routes.
Yeah, there's other things to note when it comes to non-singleton service.
Yes.
And that is the level of the level in which it is instantiated, right? Because you can instantiate that service from different levels. For example, at a module level, so it will be singleton for this module, but it will be a different instance for other modules.
Yeah.
And also at the component level. So let's say you don't change routes, but different components in the same route instantiate different instances.
Correct.
The main problem will be that the instances data are not synced. So if you change to a service, one instance, one data, that data will not change the data in the other service instances. So the application state starts to be inconsistent.
Inconsistent,
Yeah.
it's correct. Okay, so going back to the question, right? So my team size is growing. How do I manage my Angular architecture? So the first thing we have mentioned so far is to keep your components well-defined, well crafted. Then second thing is to be able to separate or group related artifacts in the three types of modules we have defined. So it's share, core, and feature. This is important because this way you can just ask a given team of 4 people, 4 engineers work on a given specific module, while other teams working on another module without actually having too many conflicts. So that's the first thing. But actually, you can actually take it to the next level when it comes to your team size growing a lot. And that is when you actually move forward to have different repositories. So for example, if you have a module that is quite big, say for example, is your authentication module, then you might actually want to separate it from the main project, put it in the same repository, and then link it from the original one. There are different strategies by which you can do this. Actually, one of them is called Git submodules. With Git submodules, you can actually have in a project repository the other repositories that are related. And it's pretty simple and it's pretty cool to be able to manage the versions according to those different projects. Although you might be interested in actually using the regular, typical way, which is the npm module, which is the typical one we might already be aware of, is by making your own module, say authentication module, an npm module. So by making an npm module, it's pretty simple. You just install the module neat, put it in your project, and start working.
Yeah, so what's the difference between an npm module and a Git submodule?
So the main difference is that, okay, there are many differences. I believe one of them is that npm modules work with semantic versioning, whereas Git modules work with hashes. So when you want to update the reference of the version of the module you're using, you will change the hash using Git modules. But with npm, you change the Semver version. Okay.
The rest is, yeah, that's a functional difference, right?
Yeah.
But the main difference I see is the level of the level of which you can choose what to get from the repository. For example, if you get an npm module,
yeah,
you can only get whatever the author has published.
It's correct.
Right?
Yeah.
However, a Git submodule, since it's a Git repository, you can choose anything that is available in the repository.
Nice.
Be it branches, be it specific commits, be it
cool.
What
Tags. Like select a tag?
Oh yeah, tags for releases. So you have all that freedom into what part of the code you want to have available for your application from the GitHub module.
Yeah, that's good. So going back to Vitali's question, so should I put it in a share module, or should I put it in a library outside my project? So this is where I tell the students I often teach Angular the following thing. My motto is to actually keep things concentrated until I need them separated. That's my motto. Like, always keep things together in the same component, in the same module, in the same project, until you face a challenge, an obstacle that makes you actually separate things. So, in my opinion, my advice will be to put it in the share module, and when you realize that it's actually too complicated to maintain that code base because there's so many engineers working there, then you can just separate it into a repository and then use either npm or GitHub modules.
Yeah, there is actually another use case to why using GitHub modules or npm modules.
Yeah.
And that's when it's not just your application, which depends on it.
Yeah.
For example, if you make a module that is specific for authentication,
yeah,
but you need it in your application, but another application that is from the same company wants the same module, they can share the functionality, and that way you don't have duplicated logic here and there.
Totally. Okay, we're running out of time. It's 1:34 already, and I guess we have about 15 minutes left, right? Is that correct, Bartosz?
Actually, I would like to have like a Q&A session in the end. So I think that for your content, we have like 15 to 20 minutes.
That's perfect. All right. So
I just wanted to add one point. I really like the idea that you said about separating into core, shared, and the feature modules. But I often face the situation when also people ask me what to do when your module is very big and you don't want to create yet another module, but you can actually make a nested module in the module. So make a hierarchical structure, not only the flat one, right? So this is very important because you have a module and you think, okay, I mean, it's too big, I need to cut it into 2 pieces, right? But if you will actually put it on the same level, that could maybe not a good idea because you still want to make it related to something. So the answer for that would be that you can make a structure of modules and sub-modules and then also have it separated still, but you know, they are related in the hierarchy.
Love it. It's a very good point. This actually reminds me of a typical use case, which is material, Angular material. When you're working, for example, with different components of Angular material, you often add them to your root component, root module, just add them, say, mat button, mat slide, my toolbar, etc., etc. But you don't want to clutter your root module a lot. So you actually create a module that it's called, whether it's custom material module, and then you put all the modules you need there to keep that module is specific for those imports. And then that doesn't need to be actually a broader module, it can be inside. So that's pretty much like another use case of what you're mentioning. But nested modules is a very good use case as well. So thanks for mentioning that.
Cool. What's next, guys?
Next question. Carlos, why do you name 5 good practices of scalable Angular applications? Let's give the audience something they can actually see right away and start applying today, okay?
Okay.
And
so,
be quick because we
Okay, to be quick, let's start for the naming. Okay, when you use naming, it's recommended that you use a camel case for the class names and stuff like that, right? I don't see the other one, which will be kebab case.
Which is with dashes.
I think which one is the one that starts with with lower case, the first one?
That's camel case.
That's camel case?
Yeah, but
I think that he's saying that camel case starts also the capital letter at the first word. He's saying that I mean, I don't know, that he wants to say that the first letter is small, but every next word has a capital letter, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's correct. This camel case is incorrect. We just realized. It's
Yeah,
not,
that's why I got lucky.
yeah.
What okay, so camel case usually is first character in lowercase, and from then on, every word should have its first character in uppercase.
In
right?
uppercase, yeah.
So that is the convention for variable names and stuff like that.
Okay.
Right. The one that starts with I think it's called upper camel case.
Okay.
And that means the first character is also uppercase, and that is used as a convention for the class names.
Class names, correct. So I have one question. Should I use different work like cases for my project, or should I keep one, or how should I manage that?
Okay, the most important part is that you be consistent.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you are not consistent, you cannot infer nothing from the code, right? So the convention that most of the people grab, and most of the style guides that you see out there, the Angular style guide, Airbnb, and the GitHub and others, recommend using a camel case for variable names, upper camel case for classes, kebab case for folder and file names, and and basically avoid using underscore for private variables.
Yeah, that's one I read.
Especially in TypeScript, because we have private the word private, right?
Yeah.
So it makes no sense to try to denote private with an underscore.
I have one question. How about when I have functions that are super big? How should I manage those functions? Is it that okay to have big functions?
Okay, it's recommended to have small functions for a variety of reasons. Yeah. For example, the reasons you should use small functions is because first, it encapsulates better the functionality you are trying to use to execute. Right?
Yeah.
It makes it easier to test,
yeah.
Which means it makes it easier to apply some good practices like test-driven development, unit testing, and others like that.
Correct.
Also, if you have small functions and then you use those functions in a bigger one, and the functions are correctly named to denote what they want to do,
yes,
it will usually make the bigger function more readable and
it's
shorter.
Correct. It's correct. Totally. I love that approach. How about if we jump into I don't know if we have we don't have anything. How about if we jump into anti-patterns, ways not to actually write code?
Okay.
Share some of them. Okay,
so let's start by a few of the things that we should take care not to do.
Yes.
Is starting for. I'm sorry, I'm reading right now.
It's an interview. You cannot actually, keep things.
I'm not able to remember those ones from the top of my head because I do it by inertia. I've done it so many times that I don't even have to remember that. So, okay, let's start for global variables. There in the past, many library authors used to load the global variables, the global scope, and that leads to some incompatibility between libraries, right? Since we have now model bundlers and we can avoid that pollution, we should avoid global variables so that we don't face that collision between libraries.
Okay. Well, I hear about another one, which is the component selector names. How should I name my selector names, and how shouldn't I?
Okay.
And for everyone in the audience, a selector name for a component is the name of the component in another HTML. It's the way I can import a given component in my HTML using these symbols.
The tags.
Yeah,
right.
those tags.
Okay, So it's recommended that it denotes the kind of functionality you are using, the kind of component you are making. So if you have a button that is made for sending something, it would be like a submit component, a submit data, for example, right?
Yes.
However, that's not enough because maybe you import different components that have this collision in the names.
Yeah.
So it's recommended that you prefix the selector with the application you are doing. For example, for some kind of prefix. The most common one that you see when you use the CLI of Angular is app dash app dash component name. So, however, if you have a name that you want to enforce in your application, for example, sales, so you could make a prefix that is SLD dash component name, and that should prefix and avoid collision in names with other modules.
That's good. That's good. That's very good. That's very good. Okay, now I think that'll be enough. We have one last
I would just
question.
add one more remark to what you just said, that you can also use a linter that actually automatically checks if you use a proper prefix. That's also very nice to actually make, because I'm very fan of automation, right? To static code analysis, to automate everything that can be automated so that we can maintain the high quality of our artifacts. So if you, for example, agree that you want to have like a specific maybe like prettier, exactly. You want to have a specific prefix for your application because you're building a sales application, as you said, or maybe your company first letters that you want your library or your project to have embedded in, like a namespacing. You can use a linter or any other static code analysis to actually always guard that you are always following that rule.
Totally, totally. And you can also add prettier to it. So you can just do it automatically. So the code is refactored by itself, like some of them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Vitaly just mentioned prettier. Good.
Okay, I'm going to jump over to the next question, which is... which is your turn.
Okay, so Juan, how do you manage state in the application? When you get a big application, you usually have lots of state to keep track, and it's very hard to manage. How do you fix that?
You don't. you resign. No, I'm kidding. Actually, there are many ways to work with application state that it's complex, that it's big, and that it's not easy to handle. So let's start by saying something is that you might not need any external dependency pattern or implementation to actually manage and handle your state in your application. Although, if you're building a big sufficient application, you may need something you might know as Redux. Redux is one implementation, is a pattern actually, that allows you to keep all your information located in the same place. That same place is also known as the single source of truth, and it's also known as the store. So the store is where all the information is located, and all components just access the store directly in order to get the information they need.
It's actually, this is a perfect example of a singleton. The store is a singleton that is available through the application. The complete application has access to the store.
Exactly. In the other hand, we also have the choice of not using Redux, which is completely fine. You might not need it. That's completely okay. Actually, Mike Ryan from the NGRX team is coming to talk about why you might not need NGRX. Just come, ngcolumbia.com.
Shameless promotion.
Some ads. So if you're not using Redux, it's completely fine. You can actually use the regular way of communicating components, which is inputs, outputs, or just external services. But that's completely fine. We're not going to dive too much into this because I think we're running out of time. And there's people actually with a lot of questions in the chat. So let's just, if this was an interview, it went out pretty well. And
you should negotiate the salary now.
Yeah, well, that's yeah, I'm finished. This is it. Hey, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, this was very nice format of exchanging the knowledge and asking questions. I mean, Chuck will hire you instead. Guys, we have like a lot of people. Would you like to cover some topic by us? Like, I don't know, when not to use NGRX or any other problem that you have faced about modularization maybe, or structuring. I mean, we are here to actually dive deep into right now and have a discussion. You are able to write your questions, and we would love to actually try to solve anything that you face and would like to have a discussion on. This is the 1 minute we will wait right now for our guests to write.
Can you check the Q&A? I want to see if there is something there.
No, the Q&A is for Bartosz. He just put a question and it's directed to every attendee so they can answer.
Oh, really? I thought they...
It's completely different.
Guys, are you live? Okay, sure. Modularization and state management. Are you having any specific question about modularization? We have talked about like a primary way of cutting down into feature modules, core module, and the feature and the shared module, and then that we can have a nested modules inside of feature modules. And we have also showed the folder structure. And just I'm trying to a little bit know more what you would like to actually ask. Yes, with the structure. Can you, Juan, can you go back to your slide with folder structures?
Yes, sir. So we have something over here. It's this one. Yeah, this one.
Here it is.
Yes, so as you see, we have a proposed folder structure. Do you have any particular question? Maybe you have your edge case that you don't know how to deal with. Nishant.
This person probably didn't
see that part of the presentation.
Okay, Nishant said that he will write us a question. I'm just wondering if this tool allows me to allow a participant to speak up with the mic. Let me try. Vitaly, can you say something? Can you try to use your microphone? I just allowed you to speak with this tool. I'm just curious if it works.
Hey, Bartosz, in either case, there's an open question in the Q&A by Jonathan Pinzon. Does unit testing get more complex when you use NGRX, and how to deal with that complexity? Carlos.
Okay, that depends, right? Because if you started using NGRX after the project was started, it might get very complex because you have like already some tests, and that tests will disappear when you change into NGRX. When you get into NGRX, you get to test 3 things, which are the actions, which is not that big of a deal because you just test that when you instantiate the action, it has the proper form, the proper JSON schema.
Mm-hmm.
The reducers are pretty easy to test as well. You just give it an initial state and then an action, and you check the final state after the action because it's a pure function, right?
Yeah.
What gets very hard to test are the effects.
Yeah, the side effects of your reducers.
Yeah, and it's even harder if those effects are not pure. Pure effects are the effects that get an action, do something with that action, like
HTTP request.
Yeah, and at the end of that request, sending another action to the store. However, impure effects are the effects that also make other dispatches, for example, that it's usually not recommended. For example, there's been in some of my projects where we need to dispatch multiple actions based on the same effect. So we tend to use something like the tap operator to execute extra logic at the end of the effect. And that is very hard to test because it's asynchronous. So you have to try to catch those actions from the dispatch part of the store instead of waiting an observable of a single action if the effect was pure, right? So as good as much as you can with the effects, keep it pure, one action in, an operation inside, and one action out. As good as you keep it like that, it will be pretty easier. It will be easier to test.
Yeah.
I would just ask, actually, because that's something that maybe I was not aware before. What do you understand when you say pure and not pure effects? Because effect by default is something which I understand as a side effect, right? Which is not pure. I mean, the functions are pure when there are no side effects, and you introduce something which is called pure effect.
Okay, so it's not based on a name, a normal name. Like, I think I'm the only one that says pure or impure effect, but I'm basing those names in like pure and impure function, right? If you have a pure function, it does something and returns something, right? And that's the idea I have with a pure and impure effect. So it receives an action, does something with that action, and returns another action. The impure one is the one that have other side effects inside itself, like dispatching other actions, and it should not.
So you're saying that a pure effect is one that takes an action and returns another actions,
yeah,
and does not perform any other actions in the meanwhile.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Most of the ways to avoid dispatching multiple actions in an effect is if you dispatch that action at the end and then create other effects that capture the action of that effect.
Then you can.
So it will be like a middleman effect action that gets triggered at the end of the effect, and then other actions subscribe to that one. So you can test each of that sub-effects in isolation.
In isolation, it's like nested actions.
Yeah, something like more like chaining actions.
Chaining actions, yeah. So summary, it is much easier to unit test actions that are not chained together, that are like they have one single responsibility. But when they're chained together, different actions, it's much more complex. That's what Carlos is saying.
I think Victor Safkin called them as triggers actions that trigger another actions.
Yeah,
there we go.
Exactly, very good.
Okay, we have a question. Nishant, I sometimes find it difficult to, at what level I ended up making modules. So you don't, you're not sure where, at what level should you make a module. Am I understanding it correctly?
Yes. Likely. I think it's very likely, yeah.
I might take that one.
Okay.
So it's very simple. Well, again, I'll come back to my motto. This is a very personal approach, but I'll just share with you. What I do is that I try to keep everything together. Again, I won't create a module right away. I will just put everything in the root module, every component. And when I realize that there's just too much clutter in the same module, like, oh my God, there's so many components here, then at that moment, I take the decision of creating a new module. But at the beginning, I try not to create more modules because that makes it a little bit complicated to actually manage. But if you have another approach, maybe you can share it. Maybe Bartosz.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to refer what you said, that you don't do cut the module into pieces before you feel you need to do this. Actually, I have like a general approach that I actually sometimes start to write some code, and I like start from the small. I mean, from the try to design everything at once before I don't know yet how the design would evolve. So sometimes I create a component and the second component and the directive, and then I look at it, I don't like it. This just does not work together, and I remove that directive and write this in the component. So that what I'm trying to say, that you don't have to know all the answers at the very beginning, because your answers would come as you design. You write code, you design, and then you feel, oh, I should extract it to the different component, or I should create a directive out of it. Or the same happens to what you said about modules. You create a module and you think, this does not work together, I should separate it. And you don't have to actually know the answer before you write it. You only, when you already write those modules, components, or elements of your app, you come to idea that this is not working together. I need to split it up. So I would say that my strategy is not to actually answer all the questions from the very beginning, but during the design and at the end of the implementation, I can see maybe that would be an idea, good idea to split it up. What do you think?
In basic terms, you have like it should be like keep it together until it becomes a problem. And also there is guidelines like the 7 files by folder, but most of the time it will be a gut feeling, like what you feel it's still okay to keep together, or is becoming too complex to justify making another module.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, thanks, got it. Do we have any other questions, guys? Actually, we are almost an hour of our meeting, so we are going to be finishing. So unless there are any other questions that we would like to answer for you. In the meantime, I would like to thank very much Juan and Carlos for joining us. It was really a pleasure to actually host a lot of people on this virtual meetup and actually discuss some interesting topics. None of the questions are appearing, so I would just say once again, thank you very much for being here. The speakers are so amazing, from Juan to Juan. Vitali, thanks a lot. So thank you guys. See you next time on the next Angular Academy show. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.